Clara never belonged in fancy restaurants. Her life was a blur of odd jobs, overdue rent, and second-hand clothes. That evening, she clutched her sister's borrowed dress nervously as she entered the elegant, candlelit dining room. The truth was harsh. Her sister had tricked her into taking her place on a blind date, saying, "Just go. He won't know the difference." Clara's plan was simple: explain the mistake, apologize, and leave. But when she saw the man waiting at the table, everything froze. He was tall, polished, and had the quiet air of someone used to being in control. His eyes, however, carried something unexpected, a tired gentleness. This was Daniel, a single dad and CEO, who had no idea the wrong sister had just walked in. The chandeliers above glimmered softly, casting a golden glow across the restaurant. Every detail screamed of wealth: the fine silverware, the quiet music, the waiters gliding effortlessly across the room. Clara felt out of place, her borrowed dress tugging uncomfortably at her waist. She rehearsed the words in her head: "I'm sorry, there's been a mistake." But when Daniel stood to greet her, extending his hand politely, something inside her faltered. His smile was small but kind, not arrogant like she expected. "Clara?" he asked, his voice low and steady. For a moment, guilt burned in her chest. She should correct him. She should explain. But instead, she nodded and sat down, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. Daniel studied her quietly, noticing the hesitation in her eyes. But rather than pressing, he simply asked about her day. Clara's answers were short at first, awkward, but his patience disarmed her. Slowly, she realized he wasn't trying to impress her with wealth or status. He was just human. Still, Clara kept thinking, the longer I stay, the harder this will be when he finds out the truth. As dinner unfolded, Clara expected to feel judged. She braced for questions she couldn't answer, for conversations about wealth, travel, or business she wouldn't understand. Instead, Daniel asked her about her work, about her dreams, about what she enjoyed doing when life wasn't so heavy. For the first time in a long time, Clara felt seen. She admitted how hard things were, working long hours just to scrape by, how sometimes she felt invisible in a world that valued appearances over effort. Daniel didn't flinch. He leaned in, listening intently, his sharp CEO exterior softening with every word she spoke. "That sounds exhausting," he said quietly. "I can't imagine how strong you must be to keep going." Clara blinked at him, surprised. No one had ever called her strong before. Most just called her unlucky, irresponsible, or poor. In return, Daniel shared pieces of his own story. He told her about his son, about the challenges of balancing boardrooms and bedtime stories, about the weight of being both father and mother since his wife had passed away. The more he spoke, the more Clara realized, wealth didn't shield him from loneliness. He carried burdens of his own. Hours slipped by like minutes. The restaurant grew quieter, waiters clearing tables around them, but Clara and Daniel remained deep in conversation. Clara laughed for the first time in weeks when Daniel recounted his son's mischievous adventures with paint and walls. Daniel chuckled at her stories of quirky customers from the coffee shop where she worked. It felt easy, natural, as though they had known each other longer than a single evening. Yet beneath the laughter, Clara's guilt grew heavier. She wasn't supposed to be here. This was her sister's date, not hers. She was the stand-in, the mistake. Finally, she gathered the courage. "Daniel," she said softly, "there's something I need to tell you." Her voice faltered as she met his steady gaze. "I'm not the person you were supposed to meet tonight." Daniel leaned back slightly, his brow furrowing. But instead of anger or disappointment, his expression was calm, curious. "I know," he said simply. Clara froze. "You know." He nodded slowly. "From the moment you walked in, I could tell. But it didn't matter. You stayed. You spoke with honesty. That means more than any planned meeting ever could." Clara's breath caught. For the first time that evening, she realized she wasn't being judged for what she lacked, but valued for who she was. By now, the restaurant was nearly empty. A quiet stillness wrapped around them, broken only by the soft clinking of glasses. Clara leaned forward, speaking more freely than she ever had with anyone. She confessed her struggles, nights of skipped meals, mornings spent rushing between jobs, the shame of never feeling enough. Her words trembled at first, but Daniel's silence gave her courage. He didn't interrupt. He simply listened. Then he spoke, his tone lower, almost vulnerable. People assume wealth solves everything. But it doesn't fix loneliness. It doesn't tell you who you can trust. His gaze met hers. Sometimes, it just makes the walls higher. The honesty in his voice stunned Clara. She realized he wasn't offering pity. He was sharing truth. For all his success, he too carried scars, doubts, and fears. When she mentioned his son again, his face softened in a way she hadn't seen before. The love he carried was undeniable, yet so was the fear of failing as a father. Clara's response was simple, but it struck deep. From the way you talk about him, I don't think you could ever fail him. You care too much. And that's what matters. Daniel's composure cracked, just slightly, but enough. For the first time in years, someone saw him beyond the title of CEO. As the night wound down, Daniel signaled for the bill. But instead of standing, he remained seated, his eyes still fixed on Clara. I was supposed to meet someone else tonight, he said softly. But I think I was meant to meet you. Clara's throat tightened, tears pressing at the corners of her eyes. She had expected rejection, dismissal, even ridicule. She had not expected acceptance. Daniel stood and extended his hand. Would you allow me to see you again? Not as a mistaken date. But as you. Clara's lips trembled into the smallest smile. She slipped her hand into his, the warmth steadying her racing heart. For the first time in a long time, she felt something she thought she'd lost, hope. As they walked out of the restaurant together, Clara realized that sometimes life's greatest turns don't come from careful plans, but from unexpected mistakes, the kind that lead you exactly where you were meant to be. And so, a poor girl who thought she didn't belong discovered that kindness, honesty, and courage can open doors no wealth ever could. Because sometimes, the wrong date is exactly the right beginning.